Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. I'm David Ebner with Merrill, Lynch, and my co-host this evening is Charlie Shields with Wells Fargo Advisor. Hey Charlie, how are you?
Good, David. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you.
Good.
Charlie, we have an exciting show tonight, and we're going to learn a lot about a local pharmaceutical company, a publicly traded pharmaceutical company, so we're really looking forward to that. Before we get started with our guests, PEs have moved up here, right? Mm-hmm. And is that the whole story? Is it so people just focus on their PEs in their portfolios?
No, I think price-to-earnings ratios can be one of the tools in the tool bag. But when a stock is running because everybody loves it, the price-to-earnings can get way beyond what it should be, and that might be a warning flag. I think you have to compare the price-to-earnings ratio with the growth rate of the stock and make sure everything's going along as expected. You'll see situations where there's some dynamic leader like Steve Jobs, and suddenly when they get ill or whatever happens, a plane crash, God forbid, all of a sudden a stock isn't worth 40 times earnings anymore. It's only worth 15 or whatever. So a price-to-earnings ratio is a good, one of the 5 or 10 main tools in the tool bag, but it's not something you can just focus on without thinking about other things. How do you feel about it?
Well, obviously, corporations, economies are very complex, and to whittle it all down to one factor or one equation is kind of crazy, right? And you really have to look at the economy, you have to look at the competition, you have to look at the investors' behavior, right? Investors are irrational. When things are down, they sell things off, and you have cheap PEs. When things are up, they keep buying, and we have ridiculous PEs. So there's lots of components you have to look at, and I think you're right. The PEs don't tell the whole story. They're a good starting point, possibly, to look at your portfolio, but you really have to look at multiple situations, especially when it comes to individual stocks like that.
Sure. And price-to-earnings ratios can be different in different industries. Something that's cyclical like the airlines or utilities or automobile stocks that are very cyclical, they're never going to have the same price-to-earnings ratio as some innovative technology company can rise to if it looks like they're going to do well for the next 10 years.
There's no question about it. Plus, the manufacturing is a lot cheaper for the technology than those larger things. But, you know, we've talked a lot about energy self-sufficiency, and we've had some great technologies, and they've been able to find oil, which is pretty amazing that here 10 years ago we were talking about us being handcuffed to the rest of the world for oil, and now we're going to be not only self-sufficient but maybe the largest producer of oil. What's going on in the oil, in the energy sector, here or abroad?
Well, there's some very interesting things going on. There was a very timely and interesting article, I believe it was by Holman Jenkins in the Wall Street Journal, that talked about the fact that several large companies in Europe could be energy self-sufficient if they were doing the same things we're doing, fracking and this type of thing. But apparently Putin has got some of these countries intimidated, and he's got a lobbying relationship with the energy companies where they are advertising how good Russian oil is and all this sort of thing. And there's even one country in Europe where Putin has given them a long-term discount on the price of energy, provided that they won't do any of this fracking. Now, when an article like that appears in the Wall Street Journal, it tells me that it's time for market forces to work their way in. When there's an opportunity, money will pour in, and a guy like Putin making a bad reputation for himself will have less influence. And so I think one of the reasons that the market was only down for a day when this Putin thing occurred was because people immediately realized he's overplaying his hand, and there's some very exciting things going on. So I don't expect our markets to stay down very long over the next 5 years. I think there's some very exciting things going on out there.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and obviously a timely article. And you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head with market forces do change the game, and it does change, especially when we have a geopolitical situation, someone overplays their hand. So that's an excellent point. But let's talk about overplaying our hand. Long-term interest rates, still low, historically low, not going any higher. Obviously, the mortgages are being refinanced, but that's slowing down. Are we ever going to see higher interest rates in the long term?
Well, I felt like we were going to see them, especially the longer-term rates. I felt we were going to see them, and we're not. And I'm seeing some fairly reliable buy signals coming in the longer-term bond markets, which is kind of strange. But, and I'm not going to tell our viewers and listeners to run out there and buy 30-year bonds right now, but what I'm saying is it looks like interest rates are staying down and a lot of people are scratching their heads. And could it be that lower costs of energy, for example, are going to make things cheaper to produce? And therefore, and with the internet and pricing, if you try to raise your prices, someone else will take your business away. So maybe long-term interest rates are not going to go up as much as I first thought. I still expect to see a 5% 30-year U.S. government bond at some point, but I'm starting to think we won't see much higher than that. How do you feel?
Well, you know, you bring up an interesting point, because obviously with the last few years and the Fed making money very easy, a lot of liquidity in the marketplace, you would expect the simple thing, inflation, what you're talking about. Obviously, innovation has killed inflation over and over again, but I'm expecting inflation. I do still expect inflation. We still have a lot of liquidity out there. The banks are flushed with money, as we've talked about over and over again. They will. We just really haven't seen the velocity of that money. Mm-hmm. And once that velocity starts taking off, inflation is hard to keep in check, especially with these historically low interest rates. And it doesn't look like our new Fed committee's chairwoman, is interested in raising rates anytime soon, or tightening money at any time soon.
Correct. It's going to be very interesting. Let's just suppose that by August of 2014, the economy is starting to really take off, and they've already pre-announced that they won't be raising rates. You know, they're going to continue the taper, and they won't be raising short-term rates for a long time. All of a sudden, the market might start to say, "Whoa, wait a minute." They may be saying that, but what are they going to do? And we could have a timeout in the stock market for a while when that happens. But going back to our earlier themes, if we get that timeout, a 10 or 12% correction, I'd be in there buying hand over fist. That's my opinion.
No, that's a great. You're 100%. You're 100% correct, because over a 5 and 10 year period, we're going to do very well, especially if you have that disconnected 10 or 20%. What about gold? Doesn't gold track with inflation?
Well, gold is one of my three vigilantes.
That's right.
I like to watch gold, keeping the inflation honest, and letting our fiscal managers and letting our Federal Reserve know what we think they're doing. I remember back when Jimmy Carter was president, and we had 16% mortgages and 17% 30-year government bonds. The markets were very unhappy with what they were doing at the time, just printing money to get out of solutions. Now, I always suspected they were printing the money to get even with the Arabs, who had quadrupled the oil prices overnight, but that's a story for books to be written and read. But still, when you look at today's situation, gold has bounced recently. I'm going to be very interested to see whether this bounce sticks. That's one of the vigilantes. The other we just talked about, the 30-year bonds. If I start seeing them go through 5%, I'll say, well, I was wrong. That's another vigilante that says inflation's coming back. And the dollar. If the dollar starts to drop through, well, we can kick that around, but the dollar's the other vigilante.
Yeah. If the dollar drops, what happens?
Well, okay, if the dollar's, to a certain amount, if the dollar's dropping, it helps us to export our stuff to other people.
Of course.
But every country is out there trying to make their currency drop so they can export their
Same
stuff.
game. Race to the bottom.
Yeah, and that race to the bottom can fluctuate. But if the dollar starts a serious drop through, you have to go back to the Deutschmark instead of the euro to really see what interest rates are over the longer term. If we start falling through the bottom of what they were 10 years ago, that would be another clue. That would be the third vigilante screaming, watch out for inflation.
Yeah, here it comes, yeah. Well, I think it's important for people to think about it and stay on top of it, so you definitely have to. We have a question before we get to our guest, Charlie, and that comes from Don Rogers in Wayne, Pennsylvania. If a stock is going up in price but has high volume, is this a good sign to invest in that stock?
Well, usually it is. There's a guy named Joe Granville years ago who made his name as one of the real gurus of the stock market, writing books about unbalanced volume, and he thought a 1,000-share rise in a stock, a thousand share purchase in a rising stock was more important than a 100-share drop in a stock price, and he would keep track of this and get clues as to how much interest there was. Certainly, if institutions are coming into a stock and they've gotten recently interested, and you see the volume rising, that's a clue that this might be a place to look. And Investors Business Daily publishes these lists of stocks that are momentum stocks going up on big volume and all that sort of thing. You can get to a point where the little guy that hasn't been paying attention to a stock that's gone up 4 times in 2 or 3 years comes in late, and all the smaller investors are creating that big volume, and the institutions are handing it to them, where it can be a warning. So I don't want, just like we were talking earlier about PEs, I don't want to tell somebody that rising volume is a sure thing and go in there, but it's a useful tool just like the other 8 or 9 in the tool bag.
Exactly, and that's great advice. And Don, thanks for that question. If you have a question, please send it into Money Matters at 205 East Levering Mill Road, Ballackinwood, PA 19004, or email us at moneymatterstv@gmail.com. Well, our guest this evening is Dr. Joseph Kim from Inovio. Inovio. I knew you were going to correct me. A publicly traded pharmaceutical company here in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Dr. Kim, tell us how you started the company.
So I actually started this company with my PhD professor out of UPenn Medical School. So it's sort of the typical startup story about 13 years ago. And we grew the company from 1-person operation to about 75 and growing at this point.
Did you have this idea while you were in school, and is that how your relationship started?
Yeah, actually I was at Merck, a large pharmaceutical company before that. And I've actually only worked for these 2 companies in my career.
Wow.
Merck actually sent me to get a PhD at UPenn, and I ended up working with Professor David Weiner, who's still very active as an advisor of the company, a shareholder, and so on. And he was working on a fantastic new breakthrough technology called DNA vaccines. And it's something that our company is based on. It's just using synthetic DNA as a product to treat cancers or even create vaccines against HIV or flu. And it's a breakthrough technology, and we've been translating this great bench science to something clinically validated and commercializable ever since.
So the two, sorry about that, Charlie. The 2 of you came up or developed this technique, and how's that different from what we currently treat cancer, or how we currently treat cancer?
Yeah, so right now the current treatment for cancer is horrible.
Okay.
I mean, it's 100 years from now, people are going to look back at this age and say, wow, how barbaric were these guys using poison as chemo to try to kill the cancer cells at the same time damaging or killing the patients. Or radiation that can be very scarring and with high side effects. What we're doing is we're actually empowering our own immune system to kill off the cancer. So, all of us, most of us have fully functional immune hardware in our body. What's missing are the right software, and that's what our products do. It's just synthetic pieces of DNA that is a blueprint for an antigen, as they call it, as a vaccine, to train our immune killer T cells to seek out and kill only the cancer cells and leave the normal cells alone. Most of us are blessed with the normal immune system to do it. They just lack the right type of signaling, and that's what our products do.
Well, you're the expert. My information from a limited number of people that I've talked to about health, it seems like the immune system as you get older starts to break down some. So do you have to take that into account in your decisions about how you're going to treat the
Yeah, absolutely. The part of the immune system called the T cells are your immune soldiers in your body that kills the infected cells and cancer cells. And you're right, as we age, those functionalities start to go down. So you need extra boosters or extra product usage to increase the potency of those T cells.
And then what about the FDA approval process? Obviously, that's difficult, and there's high barriers to entry there. Are you having any problems getting your solution through? Because I'm sure other people have solutions too that they've had problems getting through in the past.
Yeah, so certainly we work in a very highly regulated environment. Answer is yes, we have a very strong, collaborative, very open rapport with the FDA. You have to. So we decided from the day one that we're going to communicate with them and really listen to their advice, and because they're the end-all, be-all in terms of getting our products tested through human testing and eventually get them approved. But we're sort of in a rock and a hard place as well. So as a publicly traded company, we got the SEC in one hand,
Sure.
and then FDA in the other, and everywhere else, IRS and every other government agencies. But despite that, I think we're in the middle of this immune therapeutics revolution. That's really, along with other companies in our field, Inovio's really leading the way of getting these very highly active cancer-specific T cells that we generate with our products that can seek out and destroy those cancers. So we're very happy to be leading this field.
I've been fascinated by this synthetic DNA sequencing because human genome and those stocks went absolutely crazy many years ago,
Sure.
and you knew that was early. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is now all of this hard work that was done to sequence this work 10 years ago is starting to come to reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the hard work that went in the late 90s and early 2000s is enabling us to do our work.
Mm-hmm.
So they sort of laid out the foundation. Perhaps those companies and organizations were too exuberant in their prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Every new thing takes more than 10 years to
Sure.
come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sort of standing, to paraphrase, we're standing on the hard works, the shoulders of the giants
Yeah.
who made those possible. And those, all of the genome and proteome information, those databases are available for Inovio to use free of charge. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
We couldn't be doing what we're doing now 10 years ago without spending hundreds of millions of dollars of our own money to get those information now, but those things are going into the design of our synthetic DNA products. And as I mentioned before, we can engineer these DNA sequences in a very safe and effective manner to really send out the right software signals to our immune system to go out, kill the pancreatic cancer cells, prostate cancer cells, or maybe protect you from an influenza infection. So we have all of those programs within our pipeline.
So how has the medical community looked at this? Are they embracing it, or do you need this medical community to die off and the next medical community figure it out? Has it been a positive or a negative or neutral?
We've been very embraced very well by the community. But I think it's because of the tack that we have taken. So we do our research, we file for patents, and then we get the data out in a manuscript form to a peer-reviewed publication process. So we are not, we're open to any criticisms that are positive or constructive and so on. So we've been very good at publishing our data. We have we published over 70 papers in the last 5 years. And I think that's more than some of the big pharmas out there. So
Well, you're showing your hand.
Absolutely.
You're showing the community what you're actually thinking.
Right.
It's
We like to
open
put
source.
things on the table.
Yeah.
The data. I mean, really, Inovio is a company that's started by 2 scientists and is still managed by scientists. And we make all of our decisions based on the data. So, we're not afraid to share those data. In fact, those publication processes actually work as a free marketing tool for other big pharma companies to come and collaborate with us. And precisely that's how we attracted Roche to a very important and validating license partnership that we were able to do last fall. So certainly we've been doing very well by ourselves, but also with our partners out there.
Well, the relationship with DNA to vaccines, you read that you can target based on someone's genetic history, what shots they might need and that sort of thing. Are you into that aspect of it at all?
So some parts of it are included in our design and so on, but we still view as we like to be a solution provider to the masses. So that's directly opposite of some of the personalized medicine work that other people are doing.
Sure.
You know, obviously we're all different,
Yeah.
but there are enough commonalities among us. We're all men. You know,
Right.
we're all going to have certain diseases and so on. We go through life and we all age. So there are some commonalities. If we were to have certain diseases, we're going to have similar behaving cancers, let's say.
Yeah.
So it's more likely than not. So we look for the commonalities instead of the specific individuals.
So just roughly, how much of your work is sort of preventative, trying to solve things before they occur, and how much is solving a problem after you know a person has a disease?
Yeah, so our product pipeline as well as our technology allows us to develop both preventive vaccines in manipulating and boosting the immune system, as well as to treat the patients with the disease. So we have for HIV and influenza, we're trying to prevent the infection. For cancer indications, we're certainly trying to treat those folks with more advanced disease. Very interesting product. Our lead program is a treatment vaccine. So it's women who are already infected with a HPV human papillomavirus
Sure.
that causes cervical cancer.
Mm-hmm.
There are preventive vaccines that a couple of large companies make, but once a woman's already infected with the virus, those preventive vaccines are useless. So what we're trying to do with our first product indication that's currently in a important phase 2 efficacy testing is a post-infection but pre-cancer. So we're trying to treat the women before they advance to a point of no return. So we're very optimistic on how this trial data may come out. And we expect to do that in the mid-year this year, so not too far from this time.
Okay, well, good luck.
As far as the economics behind it, is there a savings in your procedure for the cancer patient or the HIV patient, or is it the same cost to them either way?
So overall economics, I would argue that there will be a savings because we're more targeted.
Okay.
So
Less treatments.
That's right, less treatments, and also you could argue less side effects because you're not hitting them with a huge hammer, right?
Yeah.
You're going pinpoint, and you're actually leveraging and boosting your own immune system to do it. It's really how the immune system was designed to do. We just help it along using our very safe, which have been very safe and hopefully effective across different cancer types and diseases.
One of the things I found really fascinating is that you have been able to get grants from the U.S. government and also from Bill Gates. Can you talk a little bit about how the two of those occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially these fundings, the non-dilutive fundings in the early days when we were in our formative stages, which probably was the first 10 years. These non-dilutive fundings were very important in two ways. One, it was non-dilutive. Second, it was a validating money. So
Yes.
a lot of these are competitive. You file for the grants, and you're competing with thousands of other applicants. So by the action of you receiving that, scientifically, these experts are saying this is valuable enough to get funding. So in fact, we received the largest HIV vaccines development contract to help to develop $25 million over 5 years in 2008, which is culminating in launching a HIV vaccine study using our new products that can potentially protect from all of the different major strains around the world.
Wow.
So we're looking forward to start that study later this year. With Bill Gates, they funded an initiative called the Malaria Vaccine Initiative, and we're working with them to develop the next generation of malaria vaccines. And almost 2 million children die every year from malaria. So there's no vaccine out there yet. So these are the things that help us at Inovio, all the employees get up in the morning and
Absolutely.
we have additional satisfaction besides how well our stock's doing and things
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
So, Joe, is this the future of medicine?
I think so.
And because you've quickly gone from cancer to HIV to malaria, is there any, I guess, viral disease that you cannot apply this to if you get the right sequence?
Yeah, I think this has such a great applicability across different disease sectors. You know, it's pretty amazing and expansive, and we've been able to build this platform one piece at a time, and now we have amassed over 400 patents globally to protect this idea. That started as an idea, and actually, you know, Dave Weiner is considered the father of the field of DNA vaccines, and you know, we're sort of leveraging what he had researched and developed a pen, and obviously we're a startup out of our local university here. So we're very proud of how far we've come, but you know, I'm more excited of how far we're going to go from here. So.
Another one that's interesting to me is that you may be able to eliminate the need for an annual flu shot. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so that's a paradigm-changing work that we're doing. It really, you know, the current way of getting vaccines ready and getting out to the masses for every flu season is very outdated. It sort of started in the 1950s, and obviously you wouldn't use a television set from the 50s or a car from the, unless it's an antique like a 56 Chevy, right? But so we're still using it, and they're still making these flu vaccines in eggs. And the difficulty is if there's a bird flu, there will not be any eggs to make a vaccine. So the universal flu vaccine approach really pushes the envelope of our synthetic vaccines technology we have at Inovio. So most of our work have been funded by grants from the U.S. government. We received from support from a Canadian government to do a trial as well. And the concept is once we have a synthetic consensus vaccine against different sequences genetically of different viral strains, we can build a universal vaccine like we have and try to protect against both known and unknown strains. So we actually tested both in animals and humans our ability to protect against all of the major strains of H1N1 virus in the last 100 years.
Wow.
And we were able to show that, including the 1918 Spanish flu causing H1N1 virus, which killed over 40 million people in 1918 and 1919. That's more than all of the bombs and bullets did and during World War II and World War I. So it's...
Well, Dave is about to wrap up the show. I just want to say how impressed I am with the work you're doing, and thank you for staying in the United States. I know you came from Korea, and it's incredible work you're doing, and I hope we'll be able to keep talent like yours in the United States instead of helping get an education and sending them back home. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Inovio sounds like a wonderful company, and you're doing fantastic work. And it's the best part about it, I think you keep relating to, is it's local. It's right here, and it could spawn, you know, maybe a boom to our economy here. So, you know, thank you for the work you do, and hope for the best. But unfortunately, as Chuck said, we've run out of time, so we'll have to have you back at another time. Our next week's guest is Chuck Stieg. He's a CFP from SFG Advisors, and Chuck's going to talk to us about equity compensation for executives. So until next time, your money matters.